Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well, and we do welcome you here. Got an interesting show tonight based on a conversation I had with my nephew.
Yeah.
And Doug came up with an idea, and I like it. It's called Ain't It the Truth?
Right. Yeah, I think that's what we have as a culture that's really trying to make a virtue out of what they call tolerance. And
well, that's been around for quite a while, actually.
Right.
But I like your statement in here because, as you mentioned, some people they preach tolerance are the most intolerant people around.
Yeah, that's right. But if being tolerant, it means that you're going to be nice to people no matter what their circumstances are or beliefs, and I agree with that. But I don't necessarily think that that is really how things actually materialize in this culture. If there's certain things that if you actually point out that there is something that is actually true, such as what Jesus said. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come unto the Father but by me. That's in John 14:6. And he makes some really amazing claims about himself in that chapter. But contemporary culture really has a warped sense of what truth is.
Well, Doug, the thing about it is, and I was talking to my nephew there, and it's interesting, and he was just kind of talking, but you get the idea that he kind of has fallen prey to some of these ideas. But what I've noticed, Doug, over the course of time, when we were growing up, Doug, we were getting into what called the existential world, the postmodern world. And what you had was people would say things like, well, I may disagree with you, but I'll defend your right to the death to say it.
You're right, yeah.
They say that, but in actuality, man does not do that, okay? But this was a way to get you off the truth claims of Christianity, okay? Say, well, all truth is relative. But what's happened in recent years, Doug, is it's gone where it's not good enough that say you can have your truth and I have my truth. I want my truth to be your truth. The very thing that Christians are accused of being and doing is the very thing that these people who are postmodern, really, if you will, or what I've termed it called secular medievalism, which basically they're their own church. They want to impose their own rules. Okay, so it's not good enough to be tolerant, and as we've seen over the years, Doug, as you mentioned earlier, they're some of the most intolerant people around.
Yeah,
and that's why, because Doug, here's the thing they tell you. I remember this hearing this years ago. Since you, by definition, as a Christian, are intolerant, we then can be intolerant to you.
No,
there's a justification that it's really tremendous circular reason. But this is the kind of idea things happen when you get off of true truth. I know that's redundant and repetitive, but when you get off of true truth, then everyone is free to make up their own truth, and eventually you get what's called consensus morality or consensus truth. And the largest army, the one who have the most political influence, the most money, they will be the ones that will dominate for a while. Okay, eventually it usually falls apart. In fact, it always falls apart, and causing a lot of detriment and harm to many, many people. But human beings are willful and rebellious ever since Adam in the garden.
Exactly.
They want to be God without God.
Basically, existentialism is this idea that there's sort of like this bubble that's around a person that has this truth that follows them around. Okay, but and where that truth only exists inside that bubble with that person. But for somebody outside that bubble, the truth may be different. But let's sort of unpack this idea and sort of dissect it a little bit. If a person comes to you and claims that truth is relative, doesn't he want you to believe that his relativistic claim is true, universally true? And if so, it contradicts itself.
Yeah.
And so there are certain rules that you have in terms of what the truth is. There was a class that I took when I went to college. It was a philosophy 101 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But they would set up truth tables where you would be able to determine what was true or what was false based upon logical statements, and that's really the types of things that actually that type of philosophy works.
Well, yeah, you still had a somewhat of an adherence to what we would call antithetical reasoning. If this premise is true, then this opposite premise cannot be true. Those kind of thinking, it's almost like Aristotelian logic, which is the old Greek philosophers. And we're not saying everything that's pagan or everything that's not Christian can't have truth to it. But what we're saying is ultimately it will fall apart when its truth claims are examined in the light of eternal value and in the light of eternal purpose and reason. And that's the thing I've noticed, Doug. But notice when you were taking these classes, what was it? How long ago was this? 30 years ago?
Yeah,
we were still.
That was 50 years.
50 years ago. Okay. Oh, see, time goes by when you get old. Sorry, folks, but the point of it is, Doug, is that we were right in the middle of the post-World War II, postmodern world. We have now actually gone beyond that a little bit, and that's why I was talking about the postmodern. That was postmodern. Existentialism still is true, but what's happened is they're sitting there going, okay, if every truth is true, well, I can't live that way.
I know.
So ultimately what's going to happen is they want to impose their own truth upon you. And that's when you jump in that little bubble, Doug.
Yeah.
There is the ability of, it's like the Borg in Star Trek. You can assimilate. If your bubble and my bubble kind of are compatible, we can get a larger bubble.
And you get a little bit more powerful.
A little more powerful, yes. And this is the thing about it is, when I talked to my nephew, it's interesting. I said, things about Christianity are opposite of every other world philosophy. And why has it survived?
Because it's true.
Because it's true, But the point of it is, you think, how does Jesus claims the greatest shall be least, and the master shall be servant of all? How does that jive? Even the church has problems with this. People always want to know who's in charge.
Right. Yeah.
And I say, well, I want to let me be a servant. The servant's heart is the one who is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. But we live in political realms, and I don't mean politics like Democrat, Republican. I'm talking about we live in these secular camps where we live in physical realities where you got a building and you got money and you got this and who's in charge. But that's really the opposite question of what Jesus wants to do. He says those who must be great want to be least. And that's hard. That's the opposite of our fallen nature, Doug. But that's exactly why existentialism ultimately falls apart as a truth claim. Yeah. Because people cannot stand to live where everything's amorphic, nebulous. People want to have some kind of standards, and they've rejected the truth claims of Christianity. Many people, I don't say most people, but many people, and I see this horrible in the young people who've lost their foundation. But Doug, I blame our generation because a lot of us didn't give them a good foundation.
Yeah, existentialism really, in some sense, helped the Christian faith because the people can then choose within their own set of truths to follow Jesus, and it's a feeling type of faith.
That is, and that's dangerous because
and you see it a lot in the contemporary church, where everybody's with their worship and their praise songs and everything like that, trying to build up their faith based upon raising the feelings level in the church. Well. That's all well and good. There's power in that. There's power in the...
God invented music, but we're not saying that's bad. But you substitute power with programs. You substitute, the spirit for let's say, an agenda or an organization. And I'm saying the Lord Himself was really content. He said, the gates of hell are not going to prevail against the church.
There's also a claim that there is no truth. And that claim actually destroys itself by
that's another one of those. The law of contradiction,
It contradicts itself. All that's like saying not all the lies I tell are true. Or
not all the or not all the truth I tell are lies. But I know. But Doug, that's an interesting point. You use an absolute. Whenever you use an absolute, and especially when you use it in a relativistic sense, like this is, then you're gonna the logic falls apart. But that's the thing, Doug, that I've seen in a modern culture, because it's based on feeling rather than logic. And I'm not saying feeling is not an important component to worship, to experiencing God. It is part of what we are emotional beings. God is love, and that's more than an emotion, but it is emotional. And there are things that we have, and I think those could be healthy and good in as far as it goes, but it's got to be contained by the brain. I always tell people, I says, look, Doug, true biblical revelation consists of two parts, a lot of parts, but these are two things that I've come to. You have to have the heart, and you have to have the mind. If you have only the heart, the feeling, the emotion, all that wonderful mushy, you're likely to become flakier than a $3 bill. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be strong. But if you only have the brain, the mind, you can become sterile and prisoners of the law, and you get really, really trapped by things. The Spirit of God, the Word of, I know people have read the Bible their whole lives and never got anything out of it. They study it, and the academicians, a lot of these people, because there's no heart involved in it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're sterile. They're basically dead. But we see the church, basically, we have two churches, Doug. And you got a church that's it's like a mile wide, but it's only about an inch deep in content. Mm-hmm. And that's terrible. These are these seeker-friendly churches. They come in, and sometimes they're they treat them like gas station fillings. But nobody, not designed to stay. But churches try to build up these huge churches based on feelings. But then the opposite way, Doug, is just about as bad as you got a mile deep, but only about an inch wide. Mm-hmm. The emotional thing and the spirit and the praise brings people in. Yes, it's surfacey. Yes, it's shallow. So give the content along with the other stuff, and then you have something powerful. You have revelation. Mind and heart produce revelation. The Spirit and the Word produce revelation. And once I saw an interview with Isaac Asimov, and he said, if we don't use our mind, what are we supposed to use? Revelation? And I said, exactly. That's the only way you can come to the Creator, to come to Jesus. He will be revealed to you. And he will reveal you. He's given everybody a measure of faith, I believe.
Jesus made some amazing claims about himself. And he said that he was the way to heaven.
The only way, yep.
He was and this sets Christianity apart from every other religion, especially those that acknowledge him as a prophet. Yeah. Either he claimed what he claimed to be, or he was a liar or a legend or a lunatic. And he had a conversation when he was standing before Pilate. He had a conversation with Pilate in John 18:33-38, and he said, "Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end I was born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice." Then Pilate responds to him, "What is truth?"
Boy, that sounds just like a modernistic statement, doesn't it, though? Yeah.
And that's the question of the ages, Lies can be very harmful and cause a lot of misery and trouble. If someone accuses you of murder, but you didn't do it, if enough people believe the lie on the jury, you could spend the rest of your life in prison. And suppose you deposit $10,000 in the bank, but this bank says you didn't. Well, you'd make sure you retrace your steps and correct the lie, okay? So the lie is somebody else's truth that doesn't line up with what is actually the truth.
Yeah.
And if a professor grades your paper an F based upon his own personal beliefs, that you might be wrong, your future career might suffer as a result. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I had that happen to me.
Did you really?
Yeah. What happened was I took a course on radioisotope dating.
Oh no! Okay.
And the geology professor told me I wrote the paper with basically challenging the assumptions of the method, and he came back to me and he said that if I didn't rewrite the paper with an evolutionary point of view, I wouldn't get a grade. Okay. And so I said, well, I suppose I can write fiction.
Yeah.
But basically what I did was show him that I actually understood the material, but I also...
But he wanted his agenda.
He wanted to have his agenda, so that's...
Point of view, yeah.
That was really something that was really weird, and the truth is independent of the individual. And you have the option to believe it, come into alignment with it and enjoy the fruits of it, or buck up against it and reap the consequences. And you have to watch out when beliefs, preferences, and opinions try to join truth's exclusive club. You may believe that Mars is going to crash into the Earth next year, but you'd be wrong.
Yeah. Unless it does.
Yeah, well. You might prefer that I wear a University of Michigan hat.
Oh, yeah. I was going to wear my Spartan shirt, but against the background, it probably wouldn't have shown up, you know?
But you'd be disappointed,
Yeah.
you know? And your opinion might be 5 + 4 is 10, but you'd be wrong. And it's sort of like if you use a 1959 map to drive to California, likely you'd get lost.
Yeah.
And,
Most likely. Yep.
and so truth is, what is true is independent of what might have been true in the past.
I will give this caveat, Doug. I read your last line there. And unless it's true truth, then it's eternal.
Exactly, yes.
Even if it's in the past. Jesus' statement, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Mm-hmm.
No one comes to the Father except through me, is a true truth. And you can test those claims. But
Right.
but the problem is, yes, in human standards, yeah, maps change, even scientific concepts change. There are things that don't really measure up, you know, based on human endeavor or things like that. But there are some things that remain true, and so it behooves you to say, all right, let me find out what the truth is, despite what my preconceived notions are.
Right, you know.
Despite what I was taught in the past, this might not be true. If we didn't know that, bacteriology would never come to pass.
That's right, yeah.
I think it was a Lister or one of those guys. He challenged him really, and I think I heard the story. I don't know whether it might be apocryphal, but he cut himself, and he said, "I'll be dead in 24 hours because of the bacteria, the infection." And I can't remember. I don't think he died. I think he did something, but it might not be him. And it might be an apocryphal story, but it's a great analogy. Say, look, the idea is that look, George Washington died because they bled him to death.
Right, yeah.
Okay, and so things do change when it comes to human endeavor, human discovery. But Doug, there is a spiritual reality that's always true. And the idea is Jesus made a very strong truth claim, and he made it 2,000 years ago. Okay, and it still holds true today.
And if you follow Jesus, you're most likely to end up on the right path. And there's a spiritual component to a person where if you invite Jesus to come into your life and align your spirit with his spirit, he will give you a direction and a path and a guidance. And if you stray from the path, I find myself once in a while getting spanked by the Lord.
We get lost in the weeds, and the Lord sometimes has to yank us out by the bit. But the thing about it is, it's like, okay, folks, the reason why we do like the show Revolution Against Evolution, we're not really talking specifically about evolution today, but we do the show because we want to remove obstacles to faith. But faith cannot come because of only intellect. There has to be you open your heart to the Spirit of God to come in to reveal this truth to you. But my point of it is that we buck up against things. The dominant paradigm today is evolutionary,
right.
And even today it still is. Although the truth is coming out over and over again. We've prevented things, Doug. What, DNA and dinosaurs and blood, and these millions of years old. Way back in the day when you challenged the assumptions of radiometric dating.
Right.
You have to do these things, but these are all incidentals to the ultimate truth claim: who is Jesus? And he is the stumbling block, the rock of offense. He's the one that people step. There are atheists, yeah, but generally speaking, most people have some sort of a theistic worldview. But it could be Buddhist, it could be, which is kind of almost a non-theistic religion, but they do believe in gods. But Hinduism, of course, in Taoism, all these things, Muslim, even Judaism, which predicates, it builds it up, but they have missed their own Messiah many times. Many of them have not, And
I find this idea of multiple gods sort of confusing. Which one are you going to obey today? And
some of them, yeah, because they're like, some of them are so contradictory.
Right. And if you have, like I said, if you have something that's contradictory, it can't be true.
Yeah, but
they acknowledge Jesus, and yet Jesus, by his own words, excludes himself from these other religions.
He does. I find it interesting. Was it Joshua? He's going to be a guest. Or going to stay at Doug's place. We stayed at his place in South Africa, but he talked about I think it was him that talked about the pantheon of gods, and first woke me up to the fact that Hindus will accept Jesus. They just put him on the shelf with 8,000 other gods.
That's right, yeah.
That's not really. They all fall upon Jesus' claim. They say they can't get around him, so they try to include him. The fact of the matter, that's not what he allowed. He said, "No, I am the way. There's no way else can you get there except through me. No way else can you get there."
He says, "Straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to life."
In Islam acknowledges Jesus, but not that he's a prophet. No, he did not leave that out. And we've talked about this before. The idea that the Bible was corrupted in Muhammad's day. We've gotten biblical passages way earlier than Muhammad, and they're the same as we have today. And so it's really an amazing thing when you think about it. But God has given us His Word. He's given us the Spirit of God. And He's also given us a measure of faith. You can come into it, but truth is not relative.
And if you seek after the truth and you want to know what the truth is, and you realize that there is a God that supersedes all truth, and that He is able to lead you into all that truth, He would not. He, being a good God, will not mislead you if you seek after Him and ask God to show you the way and the truth and the life.
Yeah, and we're not, as believers, we're not telling you when you become a believer, everything's going to be hunky-dory, everything's going to be good. We live in a fallen, broken world. We talk about that week after week. We are under a curse with the hope of redemption. And that hope is what makes it all worthwhile. But it's really hard, Doug. Many people sell their birthright for a bowl of pottage. They basically, I want to get money or fame, or something bad happened to me, therefore I'm rejecting. Somebody hurt me. Somebody did this. And why did God allow that? All these things happen, and we're not here to give you all the nuts and bolts answers. The theologians have talked about these for many, many hundreds of years, and there are answers to all of these questions. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to receive the revelation of Jesus Christ through the Holy Spirit, and you will be awakened. You will be made new, and again, we're not saying suddenly overnight you're going to be Mr. Perfect. We've already acknowledged we're not. That's not the issue. The issue is in the Spirit, He has brought us and seated us up in heavenly places with Him. Ephesians chapter 2. He's brought us up into the heavenly places. We are ruling and reigning in a sense with Him now in the Spirit, even though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. But the only way to do that is take that initial step, Doug, and audience, and to open yourself up to the heart that God has for you, because He loves you. He wants to bring you unto Himself. He doesn't want that any should perish, Doug. That's never been His desire. But holiness cannot bear unholiness. So He provided a way. I thank Jesus every day. I thank the Father every day and the Spirit for coming, that He provided a way of escape.
It's really the only way that describes love.
Yeah.
Love comes from God, and to be able to have a heart and an attitude of self-sacrifice, where you put others on the ahead of your own needs, and to bring about following Jesus is that kind of adventure. God will give you things to do that really are fulfilling by being able to show unconditional love towards other people.
And one of the things I left with my nephew the other day was, I said, so you have to understand that everyone has to live by axioms. There are certain premises that we, Doug and I, accept as true. Jesus is the word of life. We've experienced it. That doesn't make it true. What makes it true is because it's true, all right? But he said Jesus didn't try to defend himself by having all kinds of arguments. But I said everyone lives by axioms. I don't care who you are. If you're an atheist, You're living by an axiom that God is not real. God can't be real. I am living by an axiom that God is true. And there are things in there that I don't understand, Doug, like why is blood necessary for forgiveness? I don't understand that. These are axioms. These are premises, but they hold up in the scheme of things, Doug. There's a consistency, there's a reasonableness, there's a logic, but there's a life-affirming reality that comes from subscribing to this axiom. What I'm noticing, Doug, is people who reject the Creator are by and large very unhappy people. Now, I know that's a carte blanche statement. I know not every atheist is unhappy. But by and large, they find things to fill their life that is not fulfilling. Without the spiritual filling of that hole inside you, nothing fulfills fully.
Exactly.
You know, we have the statement, Doug, been there, done there, got the T-shirt. As we get older and older, things that were satisfied when we were younger, you could have all the money in the world, all the fame, and these people are not necessarily happier people. People who have the life of Christ generally have a joy that these other people don't have. We have a hope that the people without Christ do not have, okay? And this is the thing we want to leave you with, is the idea that there is a hope beyond yourself. There is a purpose beyond yourself. There is a life beyond this life.
And that was
awesome.
That was what held me together when my wife passed away.
Ah, yes.
And Vivian was the fireball in my life. But she went to heaven a little bit early, in my opinion, but not an opinion of the Lord, because the reason that I have the hope is because I know that there's a heaven that she's gone to. I have that promise in my heart, and I know that when I go to heaven, I'll be with her and with him, especially knowing that he sacrificed his life for me, and I am really glad of that. Yeah.
Well, same thing with my wife, Carol, your sister, she's still alive. Mm-hmm. It's been 17 years, but she was destroyed physically. She was broken, but the reality is, Doug, we're all broken.
That's right. Yeah.
And we may not feel it yet, maybe we're okay, but as we get older, Doug, I feel a little more broken than I did when I was 20. But the point of it is, physically, it's going to pass away. But there's something spiritually that will never pass away. My heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. These are the words of life, Doug. The Scripture gives them to us. God has been gracious to give us His word, His gospel, His good news, to let us know there is a hope beyond this life. And I'm excited about that. And that's right. We'll see Viv someday.
When Jesus comes back, that's when things are going to get straightened out.
It's going to make it all right.
And that's good news for us, but it may not be good news for some other people who are not in the way. When you follow something, that's what Jesus said, either you get wood, hay, or stubble, or gold, silver, or precious stones.
Yeah.
And what is tested by fire will get burned up, or it'll remain based upon the works that you've done and whether it's God was behind it. We hope you enjoyed our show tonight. We'll see you next time. Revolution against evolution. Yep.